Welcome back to the Coffee Devout podcast. I'm your host Arpin, and today's experience is going to be super unique. I'm talking to Winston, who is the co-founder of Naughty Goat Coffee Artisans. In a way to put it, I would ask you if you've ever dreamt of a coffee experience so unique, it felt like a story unfolding in your cup. Today we are journeying to the heart of Bali, and Winston is the mastermind behind Naughty Goat. Recently had the privilege of experiencing his genius, and to me it wasn't just a cup of coffee, it was a revelation, and with the storytelling that goes around it, it is truly an art form. I'll be referencing the storybook, which is available on the Naughty Goat Instagram as well. So without further ado, let's start. Winston, welcome. I have to start by saying that the coffee that you made me a few months back was unlike anything that I have ever tasted. And then you told that it was Indonesian coffee. I was really taken aback by it. People who follow Coffee Devout, we saw the Omakase experience that I had. It was a great flavor and aroma explosion for me. And honestly, I learned a lot from you and took a lot back to process and really wanted to have this chat with you. And glad you agreed to this. So, welcome again. Um, Happy to hear your introduction. Winston, over to you.
Okay, my name is Winston. I've been doing coffee for around 10 years, but basically every single project that I've been trying to run for the past 10 years went bankrupt or failed spectacularly. And this Naughty Goat thing that I started 4 years ago is the first thing that really started to work out in my life. So I'm pretty happy to see it going. You know this brand as a coffee omakase brand, but personally for me, this started out as a cold brew brand, and I'm just doing the coffee omakase because I just really want to share the kinds of coffee I enjoy making for myself with more people. That's about it.
It's a nice way to put it, conversations over coffee. And even before you step into Naughty Goat, the experience in the lounge outside, and then the book that is handed over to you. I think it's a great book. To be honest, I was really impressed the first time I held it. And it has a lot of things which I would ask about. But yeah, how did the book come in?
The storybook itself is a collation of several things. We get a lot of questions about people regarding our brand and our stories. I used to just verbally tell these stories to my guests whenever they ask. But then when we created the lounge and I knew that I wouldn't be able to host all of our guests personally anymore, I thought it might be a good idea to compile them somewhere so that people could read them without having to directly hear it from me. Or sometimes we have guests that don't necessarily remember to ask specific questions, but I know they actually want to know these things too. So stuff like how we started the business, why are we focused on cold brew, or why omakase in the first place, or what kind of pleasant or unpleasant experiences that we went through to not only start the brand, but also develop the brand. These are the sorts of things that I think people might be curious about, and I thought by sharing them in a storybook, it will be easier for us to connect with each other.
Almost every person who starts coffee businesses out of passion has like a good story to tell. But then,
I think the coffee industry doesn't make anyone enough money that if you're not passionate in it, you would want to dive into it. So I think
yeah,
most of the time, if the coffee professional or someone who by choice is running a coffee business, they're probably really passionate about it.
yeah, it's still a very unique experience to have a very beautifully designed book to tell what the founders went through and what was the story that led to the creation of the brand. So let's start with the cold brew, right? Because that's what you started with. So I felt like your signature cold brew the time I came earlier and then during the omakase, it is great and it is different in a great sort of way. Sometimes cold brew is like something off a shelf, and sometimes cold brew is wow. So there's all sort of gradients in cold brew. And What was your thought process when you were diving into that? And it's a very strong choice, if I may say. And how did you arrive to it? And any sort of wisdom in there?
To be honest, how we arrived at cold brew itself was actually a restriction because we started this brand in the middle of the pandemic, so we couldn't actually open a shop. We had to sell something that could reach people in the middle of a very strict lockdown. So we didn't have any choice but something that could be bottled, and that's cold brew. The fact that we made a very strong and high value cold brew was because we had to ship this product off the island because we were locked down in Bali and we knew that we didn't really have a market in Bali. So we had to create something that's worth people ordering from outside of the island. I thought, what's the nicest coffee I could get my hands on, and how do I pack as much value into this product as possible?
Hmm.
So we decided to make something really strong. And in the first place, my understanding of coffee as a crop, as a raw ingredient, is a little bit different than how most people in the specialty coffee industry see it. We are very used to seeing coffee being identified by terroir and process, but we don't actually differentiate all that much regarding as the crop differ a lot from year to year, which is something that the wine industry does. It's very common in the wine industry for specific vintages to be better or to be more famous. But this isn't something that we actually tell people about in coffee. So by differentiating my coffees from year to year or within the same harvest from the same estate, I want to differentiate it from separate micro lots from the same estate. And instead of confusing people with the name of the micro lot, the number of the micro lot, as well as the specific process, I just give it nicknames. And that's a little bit easier to brand. And that means that I can start to deliver really nice coffees to an audience that might not be so technically savvy. So not only do I take inspiration from the wine industry, but I know dumb it down a little bit for people who might struggle to understand the technical details, but also try to convey the character of the coffee through a naming sense. I also take inspiration from the whiskey industry in that we have got nice bottles and we make a cold brew really strong. So think basically a spirit, except it's not alcoholic at all. It's just crazy strong on the caffeine levels. And you can serve it in pretty much the same ways. You can serve it neat, you can serve it on the rocks, you can mix it with a little bit of water, or you can even mix stuff into it and it's still gonna be good. So something that's very strong, so you can have just a tiny amount of it and it's enough coffee, but at the same time something smooth enough that you can just sip it pure and it's great. So that's the idea.
That is fascinating. Thanks for being so transparent, honestly. Who would have thought such a differentiated product could come through such a big constraint? And you've truly nailed the usage as well, right? It truly makes it very versatile. I know that you do direct trade. How do you choose who to work with? What are your relationships? What's the mental model for going around these things? If someone were to like take this thought process and then just make their coffee a little better, or then make the supply chain a little better, how would you advise?
All right. So I'm not sure whether this is actually replicable for anyone else. And I'm not actually the person who directly talks to the farmers. It's one of our other owners who also happens to be the guy who taught me how to make coffee 10 years ago. He is my mentor and also one of our partners. He has been roasting for me for the past 10 years, actually. He has a lot of ideas about how coffee should be done and should not be done. And I think one of the struggles is figuring out where to source amazing coffees from. A couple of years back, I was actually watching some competition routine, and I noticed that they were asking their farmers to do some specific things that no one else in the industry was doing. And My owner, who is dealing with the farmers, is also that kind of guy. He wants to do specific things on the farm and processing level, which is convenient because he actually has some agricultural background. So he's the guy who goes around talking to the farmers and telling them, hey, this year let's do this kind of fertilizer. Let's treat our crops this way. Let's sort our cherries this way. And then let's do this kind of fermentation and this kind of drying. And let's use this type of technique. And I think one of the processes that I really enjoy that he came up with is something that he calls a hermetically sealed natural, which is basically an anaerobic natural, except the region that he first started doing this in didn't actually have access to the anaerobic tanks. So what he did was that he took these giant reusable plastic bags and he stuck coffee cherries in them. And he pushed all of the air out by submerging the plastic bag filled with coffee cherries under the water surface, which creates this sort of vacuum that pushes all of the air out, and then just tie it up above the water level. And then that's the anaerobic natural that started in that region for the first time. And it was only when that started taking off and the farmers started to have more resources, more funds, that they started to have an actual real anaerobic tank. Nowadays, we do both the hermetically sealed natural and the tank anaerobic, but both of those processes actually create very different profiles in the coffee. So I like to have both of them on the menu.
Excellent. Thanks for that nugget, because this is such a valuable spark to prove that quality of coffee can be improved anyhow. You might not have the means and resources of the wine industry, but if you're ingenious, you can pull things off, which would add a lot of value. I think the one coffee that I'll always remember, I think, is the espresso that you made for me. The one that you said only 20 left. I don't know how many left right now.
I have exactly 4 shots left of it. I haven't been surveyed. 2 shots a week, and that's it.
Wow. That espresso was like, I've tasted some really good producers. I've tasted great espresso, very well dialed in, even some championship recipes. But there was a very memorable shot. And honestly, even the fact that you nailed it in one try was quite fantastic for me. So the entire space that you've created, I know you might have thought of the entire thing gradually and then you made the lounge, but you call it a coffee sanctuary.
You call it a coffee sanctuary.
I would say you do things a little differently. And that's like, in the most honest way, it is very comforting. Like, the moment you come in, the atmosphere is very relaxing. It is very sophisticated, yet very friendly. So the fact that customers have this no perfume rule, it is radical, but I think it safeguards the space, right? So it is best for them as well as the other customers. It's a fascinating approach. I just want to pick your brain on that. Like, how did the concept come in and how does it help you to elevate the customer experience, the entire space? And how much does it play into your overall experience?
Thanks for appreciating all of those things. Actually, I think we're talking about 2 separate topics. We're talking about the no perfume rule as well as the feeling that our guests get that you said is comforting when you face. So these are actually different things. Regarding the no perfume rule, this is actually not so that your experience is amazing. It's just there because I think I'm not actually that great of a barista to be able to deal with a lot of changes in my recipe parameters. So I try to minimize the number of variables that I have to deal with. And one of those things is that I noticed that external scents actually change my calibrations a lot. And I actually have to recalibrate a lot of my espressos or pour overs whenever there's external scents that affect my grounds. So the no perfume rule is actually there so that I don't have to recalibrate my coffees every time someone walks in wearing a scent or bringing a scent. So that's for me, not for you.
I'd still argue that it does bring in a more consistent experience to the table. So in a way, it's tying into the experience. But yeah, glad you separated and now.
Very happy side effect. I'm very happy that it makes people feel. A lot of people say, "Hey, when I walk in, it smells amazing." You immediately smell the entire room that smells like coffee. Yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. But that's a side effect. The point is that I want my drinks to be consistently high quality, and the only way for me to do that is to prevent external scents from coming anywhere near my grinders. That's all.
Okay. And tell me about the next part. The
So,
entire concept, right? How does it play in?
All right, let's actually talk about what you said before. You were asking about how, when you walk into my space, it feels very comforting. That bit is absolutely intentional because I think a lot of people who build spaces for F&B and service, I think we get a lot caught up in what kind of impression do we want to make. We want to impress people, we want to wow people, we want to make people say, "Oh my God, this is amazing, this is the best thing." And actually what I realized was that I don't want to design that kind of space. The kind of place that I want is actually one that feels like home for me, a place that is cozy, that I don't mind sitting around in, that makes me feel relaxed, let my guard down, that makes me just wanna sit down and I can be quiet and that's okay with me, or I can have a deep conversation with someone and that's great. So I just really wanna kind of place that doesn't make people feel intimidated, as opposed to the kind of place that impresses people and give people a sense of distance. I'd rather have a place that makes people feel like they're coming to a place that embraces them, basically. Which brings me to the topic that I feel I'm not sure about nowadays because I haven't been going around to other coffee places anymore. But around 5 or 6 years ago, I think, I encountered a lot of coffee businesses where when I come in, as opposed to the kind of coffee shop that made me fall in love with coffee, it felt a lot like they were trying to showboat or intimidate. And I think that's a little bit of a problem sometimes in the coffee industry. Not that everyone does that, but I've seen couple of places do that, and I decided that I really just want to be the opposite. In the storybook, you read that chapter about how I got laughed out of the bar because I didn't know what a V60 was. So I definitely know that I don't want to have a place like that. A place where someone who doesn't know anything about coffee can come in and, you know what, I'll still serve you my best coffee. You don't need to know any technical details. I'll still serve you whatever's best.
Honestly, I did not appreciate all of these details until you told me now. Like some of this, like the moment you get inside the store, there are it doesn't feel like a store first of all. It doesn't feel like what a coffee shop typically would feel like. And then you come in and then you are in a space and there are no fancy brewing accessories. Everything is like behind the bar. You can only see a little bit of the barista at the distance and the machine is away, tucked away. So now I get it. It's very intentional and very clean use of space. Yeah, I think a lot went in to make that space as well, right? You would have, I'm sure it would have been a lot of work to design the space as you intentioned.
The place is actually designed by my wife, Jen, who a founding partner together with me. And I feel very grateful and blessed because I don't think we could be what we are right now if it were just me in the beginning. So I'm obviously the one who's behind all of the coffee related stuff, but the stuff like the branding, the design, even the packaging or the materials, as well as the bar, the layout, all of these things. Jen is the one who's behind all of these things. And now that I'm a little bit more mature as a business person, I do realize that product is very important, of course, but without a way to deliver it to your audience, I think you encounter a sort of fidelity issue, as in quality of transmission issue. It doesn't matter how high quality what you're trying to deliver is if your channel is poor. So over the past 3 or 4 years or so, I think I've started to appreciate a lot more all of the things that go into, okay, let's say my product is a 100 quality. How do I make it so that the person who is receiving and consuming this thing maybe can receive as close to that 100 as possible? So of course, this means preparing the person through the space. How do they feel when I am actually trying to deliver these things to them? Are they actually in the correct headspace to receive what I'm trying to tell them? That's, I think, quite important.
The nugget that you dropped about the quality of transmission is just astounding. Really appreciate that. I see a lot of coffee shops paying close attention now to space, but then it's more likely to translate into better furniture or better spoons or cups or those sort of things. But then to look at it overall as a antithesis of a coffee shop, that's a bold move, and I'm so glad that there is a place where we can experience it. So coffee sanctuary.
Rather than a coffee sanctuary, is it okay if I think of this place as a bit more like a sanctuary for people who are curious about coffee?
That would be even better. Yeah. That would be even better because the attack on senses is so low. Like you come in with knowing nothing and you don't get hit with a lot of things. So it's very clean. So I think that would be a better way to describe it. All right. Okay. So moving right along, I think all of us have seen a little bit of tough customers, and that's a fair share of having a space, letting people come into your space. How do you process it? Because your space is so different. I'm sure you would have different kind of tough customers, and the barrier to, how do I say, criticize would be even lower. Like people would be like, okay, what is this? Because it doesn't even look like a coffee shop.
Actually, I think that's a great question, but my answer to that might be a little bit unexpected. To be honest, I don't feel like I get a lot of tough customers. Most of my guests who come in are very respectful, are very appreciative. To be honest, I think most of the type of guests who might not be respectful or appreciative of what we are doing or of our products, I think in general, they just don't happen to discover us, or they might look at our menu and decide, hey, you know what? I'm not even going to give this a try. So usually, most of the people who do come in and sit down and have a chat with us, almost 100% fantastic, excellent, amazing guests. Of course, we do have people walking in who don't know who we are or who cannot necessarily appreciate what we're doing. In this case, we encounter a few different types of people, and the important thing for me is to actually establish a strong boundary to decide, okay, how am I going to deal with this person while holding a self-respect for myself, but at the same time doing my utmost best not to disrespect them in the way that I'm rejecting them. If it's the kind of person who is already disrespectful, then all right, you're just not gonna enter my space. I'm gonna try to be as respectful as possible while I turn you away from receiving our services. So basically, I just don't serve the people who are disrespectful. Other than that, we have the people who are misinformed, the people who come here expecting something that is not what we are doing. And in this case, this is just a very clean and easy communication issue. We just tell them, hey, I don't think this is what you're looking for. So this is what we actually do instead. And we tell them, hey, this is what we're doing. Are you interested? If you are, awesome. We can sit down, we can have a chat, and then I can actually serve you what I want to serve you instead of what you're looking for. And if you say, hey, no, this is not something I'm interested in. This is what I'm actually looking for. Then I will refer you to another brand who happens to do that thing amazingly. And off you go to wherever you want to go instead. Right?
That is fascinating. I want to like double click on that misinformed customer, because have you encountered someone who's, can I get an iced latte, and then or something like which is very common, and then you'd probably not have it on the menu, and then they would have a totally amazing experience when they tried your coffee or otherwise. Would you want to share one of those instead?
I can tell you both, actually. When it comes to people who are looking for something not so serious, whether it's most of the time it's iced latte, of course. Actually, would it be too proud for me to say that our iced latte is amazing? I think because we have a great espresso base, and the way that we pull our espresso is so different, that actually turns out in a very different sort of iced latte as well. It's like any wonderful coffee, it's sweet without having to add sugar into it. It's not bitter, it's not sour, it has a good amount of body and structure. Most importantly, of course, flavor and aroma. And people who are not used to drinking this sort of thing, when they encounter it for the first time, I think it sufficiently wows them, even though it's something as simple as a double restart on some cold milk. That's about it. And for the kind of guest who really cannot appreciate what we're doing, even when I'm serving them my best, that does happen from time to time. I guess I meet maybe one or two people like that every month. And in that case, then I'll just say, hey, you know what? Thanks for trying, but I know I can't please everybody. And usually they're still very appreciative, and they enjoy the chance to try something that they don't usually try. And I think I've done a pretty good job, because I always think that what I'm selling is not just a coffee that you're gonna really enjoy. I think it's that connection to someone you've never met before, into a world you've never seen before, and having that kind of new perspective and having a new way to think that you never thought of before. So that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do for my guests. Except, of course, the guests who've been here over and over again. I think those people are just looking for a coffee. And in that case, then, of course, I'm selling a coffee.
I think this has come up a couple of times now during our conversation, and I really love the fact that you always bring it back to the fact that I'm having conversations with people over coffee. And that's so important, the conversation bit. And I think that's also one of the strong pillars of what makes you so different. Even when somebody's looking for something else, there is a conversation about it. And maybe they discover something more interesting. So the conversation bit is, I think, the most fascinating part. I'm going to segue into the crown jewel. I liked one line from your storybook which says, "Not all coffee is created equal." I really appreciated that line. You made a coffee tasting menu, and then you have two versions of it. I think the 8 course coffee omakase, which is, I think, shown as a flight, that really intrigued me. And then obviously probably the best conversation I've had with someone behind the bar, very memorable, and things in your life you never forget types. I'm sure you could do this many different ways. You've done this so many times. So there is a great way, there is not a great way. Like, why did you choose? What did you choose? And now I understand the ethos, right? Okay, have great conversations. So that is certainly there. You're having that great conversation. But then how does the best coffee translate to that omakase?
First of all, let's talk about what's the best coffee, or what's a great cup of coffee, because I don't really like the word best. The word best, there's something that's not the best, even though it might get close. And I don't really like to compare my coffees against each other like that, because they're all good for a different reason. And if they're not good enough, they wouldn't be there on the menu.
Okay.
Right? For me, a great cup of coffee is the kind of coffee that when you drink it, it makes you say, oh, this is good. That's it. That's what a great cup of coffee is for me.
I remember
It's
you said that. Yeah.
so it's definitely not the rarest coffee, the newest trending varietal or process or whatever complex tasting note or structure or whatever technical terms you want to say. For me, a great coffee is as simple as, hey, this tastes good. I'm loving it. And I think it's good. That's good enough. I think one of the pitfalls that people like us, coffee professionals or coffee enthusiasts, tend to fall into is we get so caught up in intellectualizing the experience of consuming a cup of coffee that we forget it's not actually that complicated. You're drinking a coffee, it tastes good, it makes you feel good, done. Except
Spot
that, of
on.
course, we have the discernment experience to be able to critically think about that cup of coffee. But I think it's also definitely very important for us to take a step back and go back to the basics and hey, does this taste good? It's that simple.
That is spot on. I think it happens. I think more often than not, you think about it, why are you complicating it so much? And then you go ahead and you complicate it. Like when you're brewing it or when you're tasting it, you do complicate it. It happens. But that's a good reminder. Probably simplify coffee. It should be like a tagline somewhere.
All right. So the 8 course omakase, it's about. Actually, I don't think I phrased it in this way before. I just thought about it, and now that I thought about it, I'm actually gonna put this as copywriting somewhere. But the omakase is basically a way for me to show people how I enjoy coffee, because I think I enjoy coffee a lot more than other people do. And I think it's a shame that other people are not able to appreciate it this much. I think once again, this goes back to the quality of transmission issue. This coffee is already amazing for me. How do I make it so that you think it's as amazing as I think it is?
Wow. Yeah. Again, quality of transmission. I get it.
That's exactly what the omakase is about. And for me, coffee is simple. So how do I get you to look at coffee as something that is simple? And the problem is that the way that I brew my coffee is so different from the way that everyone else does it. The way that I do my pour overs is very light, very delicate. No one actually does it that way. Everyone's trying to get more potency, more power, more. They're trying to get more out of their pour overs. I'm trying to get less out of my pour overs. How do I make sure you can appreciate that the way I do? That's an example of how
Right.
the omakase is structured. And the reason it's 8 courses is because there are 8 important different ways that I do my coffee differently from other people, and that's why it's 8 courses. It's just eight
Oh,
of the things I do differently compared to other people. And of course, I set it up in a way that it transitions nicely from course to course. You don't get overwhelmed, you don't get bored. It's a nice portion for someone who drinks a good amount of coffee. And of course, built off something like a course meal, you've got an appetizer, you've got a series of mains in the middle, and then you close things off with a not so serious dessert. That's the 8 courses, man.
rounds up a lot of questions that I had. And yeah,
You wanted to go technical in this, didn't you? And then I just brought it back. Let's keep it simple.
no, I think the first time I came to you guys, I thought the omakase would be very technical. And then we did it, and then I understood what it is. And no, I did not expect that. It is also a very contrast approach because you built such a potent cold brew, and then the way you do pour overs is super delicate, and that way you can appreciate the delicate parts of the coffee, the florality. The coffee that I had was super floral. It was such a vibe, just opening up like a tea opening to the omakase. So yeah, I think after chatting with you more, I appreciate the whole experience over again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, what's your favorite brewing method and why?
V60 for sure. I like the V60 because I don't have to calibrate it. I can do it and it's gonna taste.
Pretty yummy.
Cold brew, espresso, way more difficult. I have to do it a few times before I nail it. V60, even if I don't nail it on the first time, I think I usually know what I can do to make it good on the second.
Okay, so coming up next, what's the one underappreciated coffee origin that you think deserves more love?
Indonesia, done. You look at specialty coffee, the big names are South America and Africa, which makes sense. All of the South American coffees and all of the African coffees are amazing. But you keep seeing the same names. You look at Brazil, Colombia, Panama, Africa, Kenya, Rwanda. It's always these places when it comes to specialty. I like Indonesian coffee, mostly because I'm Indonesian and local is fast, but Indonesian coffees, man, that's where it's at.
Awesome. Okay. So next question, quick tip for coffee owners to elevate their customers' coffee experience.
Super easy one.
Okay.
Remember that you are a person, the person you're serving coffee to is actually a person. You are both persons. Don't be an NPC. That's it.
Amazing. I like the NPC.
Yeah, don't be an NPC, and the person you're serving is not an NPC either. Get rid of that NPC energy, all right?
Okay. Next question. One coffee myth you'd like to bust. Let's bust some myths.
Coffee myth. Oh my god. Shit, there's so many. I have to choose one.
You could start with one.
Okay, over extraction and under extraction. I think a lot of people think of over extraction as bitter, under extraction as sour. For me, I don't think of it that way. For me, I think of it in the same way that you think about food. When you think about overcooked food, it's not always that it's burned. Sometimes it's soggy. Sometimes it's just formless. And when you think about undercooked food, it's just raw. And the flavors are not there enough. There is too much unprocessed flavor going on. And that's how I think of over extraction and under extraction. Sometimes too sour could be over extracted.
This has been fun. I think I got to peek in, I think not just yours, but both of yours mind a little bit. And you told me like the whole space and how it works and everything. And it takes a lot of energy to keep everything running, as we were also discussing earlier. Last question. What's next? What's on your radar and what's coming up this year or next year? What are you most excited about in coffee?
All right. I would like to sum up this conversation by going back to what you said. Hey, this must take a lot of energy to do. And you know what? A lot of people think they're getting a lot by coming and being a guest at this place or being served by me. But to be honest, this entire thing is for me, man. I'm having a lot of fun meeting people, sharing what I share. And the more I share what I enjoy, the more I enjoy what I'm sharing. You know what I mean? So this thing is for me and not for you. You just happen to be enjoying what I'm enjoying too. And regarding what I'm looking forward to be honest, I've never been the kind of guy to look too far into the future. This thing was definitely not as planned as you think it is. A lot of it was pretty impulsive. So I'm just enjoying everything that's going on right now. So I would like to do more of whatever I'm doing right now, pretty much. I'm looking forward to more days like today. That's about it.
There's a lot. I think I didn't, from everything I've heard, I did not expect this one coming. This was the most unexpected. But thanks for that. And I think, yeah, if you love what you do, things are a little easier. So thanks for being a guest on this podcast from India. A lot of people are going to hear about Naughty Goat. They're going to probably drop in and then you could have another conversation with them when they're there. And I'm pretty sure their experience would be as great as mine was.
Thank you so much, Arpan. Can I say goodbye with a message for your listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I would like to remind people that maybe I am lucky to be able to work a job that I really enjoy. But I think people forget that it's not that I get to work a job that I really enjoy. It's that I get to enjoy the work that I do. And that's nothing stopping anyone who is not necessarily working in their passion from doing. Like whatever you happen to be working in, you can take your time and slow down and enjoy. your work, because that's the most important thing.